Before we begin tonight's story, a quick note. The following account includes themes of suicide and death. Listener discretion is advised. Footsteps cross the hallway above you, slow and heavy, but the rooms are empty. A door slams, the air drops cold, and out of the corner of your eye, a shadow slips past. You tell yourself it's just the house settling. Old wood, drafts, imagination. Until you hear it. A child's laugh, but no child lives here. This is the Lemp Mansion, a house where death came often and never quite left. The mansion stands in St. Louis, Missouri. Built in the 1860s by the Lemp family, brewers whose beer empire once dominated the city. 33 rooms, marble fireplaces, chandeliers, a monument to wealth and permanence. But the fortune collapsed, and within these walls, one by one, the Lemps turned their despair inward. 5 suicides, each leaving another scar on the house. Today, it's remembered less as a mansion and more as one of the most haunted places in America. A place where footsteps echo, where doors slam without cause, and where visitors say the Lemp family never really left. I'm your host, Robert Barber, and tonight we're headed to St. Louis, to a mansion built on beer and fortune that became a monument to sorrow. This is the story of the Lemp Mansion, a house built on wealth and broken by grief, a house where footsteps still echo and shadows never rest. This is State of the Unknown. The story of the Lemp Mansion begins in the mid-1800s. Johann Adam Lemp left Germany and came to St. Louis with almost nothing. What he did have was a talent for brewing beer. He started small, a little grocery, some barrels of lager. But in a city of German immigrants, the taste caught on fast. By the time he died in 1862, the Lemp Brewery was one of the most successful in the region. His son William inherited everything. And he wasn't just a brewer, he was an empire builder. He expanded the company, modernized it, and turned it into one of the largest breweries in America. And with that success came the house. The Lemp Mansion rose just a short distance from the brewery itself. 33 rooms, high ceilings, carved wood, marble fireplaces, a chandelier in almost every room. It wasn't just a home, it was a statement. The Lemps weren't just wealthy, they were untouchable. Or so it seemed. In 1901, William's favorite son, Frederick, died suddenly. He was just 28 years old. Doctors said it was heart trouble, but for William, it may as well have been the end of the world. He never recovered. 3 years later, another blow. William's best friend, a fellow brewer named Frederick Pabst, died. The grief stacked on top of grief. And William, once the most powerful man in St. Louis brewing, began to crumble. On the morning of February 13th, 1904, he went into his office at the mansion. He closed the door behind him, and a gunshot rang out. It was the first suicide inside the mansion, but not the last. Over the next several decades, tragedy would stalk the family. His son William Jr. would eventually take his own life in the house. So would his daughter Elsa, and later, his son Charles. 5 suicides, each one behind these same walls, each one leaving the house a little heavier, a little darker. And it's because of that, because of the grief soaked into this house, that so many people believe the Lemp family never really left. When you step into the Lemp Mansion, people say the first thing you notice isn't what you see, it's what you feel. The air feels heavier, like the house is holding its breath, waiting. And then the sounds begin. Visitors hear footsteps pacing the hallways, slow, deliberate. Upstairs, down the long second-floor corridors. Always when the house is quiet. But when someone opens their door to look, the hallway is empty. One guest swore she followed the sound step for step up the main staircase. But halfway up, she realized the footsteps were copying her, always just a beat behind. When she stopped, they stopped. And when she turned around, there was nothing there. Doors open and close on their own, not creaking shut, not drifting, slamming. In one upstairs bedroom, staff say it happened so often they started propping the door open with a chair. But when they come back, the chair is knocked over and the door is shut tight. And then there are the cold spots, rooms that drop to freezing in seconds, not just a chill, air so sharp your breath fogs in front of you, even in the middle of a St. Louis summer. Some guests say the cold is strongest in rooms where suicides happened, and that it isn't just temperature, it's a pressure, a force that pushes them out into the hallway, like the room itself doesn't want them inside. But the most unsettling stories, they're about what people see. A man in a suit staring from a second-floor window, his face pale, unreadable. But when anyone climbs the stairs to check, the room is empty. Others describe a woman's voice, soft, melancholy, always just far enough away you can't quite make out the words. And then there's the basement. That's where the laughter comes from, the sound of a child. That story goes back to Zeke, William Lemp's youngest son. He was born with a physical deformity. Family stories say he was hidden away in the attic, rarely seen by anyone outside the family. He died young, and ever since, visitors have reported the sound of small footsteps or bursts of laughter that echo through the basement. Paranormal investigators claim they've even recorded his voice, a boy whispering, "I'm here." And then there are the shadows, figures that don't belong to the living, dark shapes that glide across walls. Guests say they've woken in the night to find one standing at the foot of the bed, silent, just watching. Gone the second the light switches on. Even the staff have stories. Servers say they've felt hands brush against their shoulders when no one's near. A manager once heard boots crossing the ballroom long after closing. The steps were so loud he thought someone had broken in. But when security checked, the room was empty. And this happens again and again and again. To staff, to guests, to investigators. The house doesn't care who you are. It shows itself when it wants to. And when it does, the experience is hard to shake. Today, the Lemp Mansion isn't abandoned. It isn't sealed up like so many other haunted houses. It's alive again, at least in its own way. Because now, It's a restaurant and an inn. You can sit down to dinner in the dining room where the family once gathered, or book a room for the night in the same spaces where the Lemps lived and died. But not everyone leaves with just a full stomach or a good night's sleep. Guests report silverware moving on its own, chairs shifting slightly across the floor. At dinner, people have watched dark figures slip through doorways, figures in old-fashioned clothes, gone before anyone has time to stand up and follow. The staff have their own stories too. One server described balancing a tray of drinks when she felt a shove against her arm. The glasses spilled to the floor, but when she turned, no one was there. Others talk about lights flickering, about cold spots that rise out of nowhere, about the sensation of being watched as they lock up for the night. And then there are the investigators. Ghost hunters travel from all over the country to spend the night here. They bring cameras, thermal scanners, and recorders. Some leave with voices on tape. Men's voices, women's voices, sometimes even a child. One group swore they captured the words, "Get out." Get out. Others walk away with video of strange mists or shadows darting across a room. Not hard proof, but enough to keep the legend alive. Because what makes the Lemp Mansion powerful isn't just its history. It's the way that history refuses to stay buried. Every visitor adds something to the story. Every staff member, every ghost hunter. Each account piling on top of the last, making the house darker, heavier, more alive. And the more people talk about it, the stronger the legend becomes. It's easy to look at the Lemp Mansion as two stories. The first, the history. A family who rose to power only to collapse under the weight of grief. And the second, the hauntings, the footsteps, the shadows, the voices. But maybe they're not two stories after all. Maybe they're the same. Because when you think about it, the house was never just brick and wood. It was a container. And what it held wasn't just people. It held sorrow. 5 suicides. Generations of despair. Tragedies that piled up inside the same walls over and over. If places really do carry echoes of what happens inside them, then the Lemp Mansion has more than enough grief to last forever. Of course, skeptics will tell you it's nothing but suggestion, that the footsteps are just old floorboards, the voices, drafts, the cold spots, well, quirks of a drafty 19th century house. And maybe they're right. All right, let me step out of the story here for a second, because this is where the skeptic in me and the storyteller in me start wrestling. On one hand, sure, it's an old house, drafts, creaks, suggestion. But on the other hand, I can't ignore the sheer number of people who say they've experienced something here. Guests, staff, investigators, over and over again. And even if you strip away the idea of ghosts, you're still left with the question, why do so many people walk away unsettled? But what about the people who didn't know? The guests who booked a room without any knowledge of the Lemp name, only to wake in the night to the sound of boots pacing the floor. Or the diners who saw a shadow pass through the hall, only to learn later that funerals were once held in that very room. There's another theory, that the house isn't haunted by the dead at all. It's haunted by grief itself. That sorrow, when it builds up enough, becomes its own kind of energy. Not memory, not spirit, something heavier, something that lingers. And here's the part that really gets under my skin. Because if it's true, if grief itself can linger, then what does that mean for the places we live in? Are we walking through more than wood and plaster? Are we walking through emotions that never died? And maybe that's what people feel when they walk into the Lemp Mansion. Not a ghost at the foot of their bed, not a whisper in the ear, but the weight of despair, thick as the air, cold as stone, waiting to be felt all over again. Even now, the house keeps its doors open. It invites anyone, the curious, the hungry, the thrill seekers, to step inside, and many do. Some walk away with nothing more than a meal, but others leave with something they can't explain. A sound, a shadow, a voice in the dark. And the question is, if you went inside, what would you find? Would you feel the grief that lives in the walls? Or would you see something darker, something that doesn't belong to memory at all? Some say the Lemps never left. Others believe the house itself is alive and feeding. Either way, the next time you're in St. Louis and you pass the tall windows and the heavy doors of the Lemp Mansion, remember this. Some who go inside walk back out with a story. Some don't walk out alone. This has been State of the Unknown. The story of the Lemp Mansion is one that lingers, not just because of its history, but because of the way the house refuses to let go of it. Whether you believe in hauntings or not, the fact remains, countless people have walked through those doors and felt something they couldn't explain. And maybe that's the real reason we return to stories like this. Not for answers, but for the shadows they leave behind. If you've been enjoying the show, thank you. It means more than you know to know that you're listening. And if you'd like to help State of the Unknown grow, the simplest way is with a quick rating. On Spotify, it's just 2 taps. And on Apple, you can even leave a review. I read every one, and I'm grateful for them all. Until next time, keep watching the shadows, because some of them are watching back.